One of the questions I get all the time is, how did you actually get prescribed Litfulo? So I wanted to make this video and walk you through exactly what happened in my case. Obviously, everyone's experience is different, but this is how the process worked for me. By the time my dermatologist recommended Litfulo, I had been dealing with alopecia areata for many years. Before that, I was using a treatment called DPCP, which is a fairly uncommon treatment that not every dermatologist offers. Unfortunately, I had another major flare up. This one was especially stubborn because it affected the front of my scalp as well as the sides and back of my head, giving me more of an ophiasis pattern. At my appointment, my dermatologist examined my scalp and used the SALT score, which estimates the percentage of scalp hair loss. Since I had more than 50% scalp hair loss, he told me I was a good candidate for Litfulo, which is approved for severe alopecia areata. Before I started taking Litfulo, my dermatologist ordered baseline blood work, including a complete blood count and liver function tests. The goal was to make sure everything looked good before starting treatment and to have something to compare against later. He also reminded me that because Litfulo affects the immune system, there are certain vaccines, especially live vaccines, that you should avoid while taking it. If you're unsure, make sure to ask your dermatologist before getting vaccinated. He then gave me a 30-day sample pack so I could start treatment immediately instead of waiting for the insurance process to play out. Then he explained exactly what was going to happen next. He said he was going to prescribe the medication, but he fully expected my insurance company to deny the first claim. He wasn't surprised by that at all. He explained that because Litfulo is so expensive, the next step would be submitting a prior authorization, enrolling me in Pfizer's patient savings program, and working with a specialty pharmacy. He also warned me not to expect this process to happen overnight. Even though it sounds straightforward, he said it could easily take 2 to 3 months before everything was approved and processed. Everything happened exactly the way my dermatologist said it would. My insurance denied the initial claim. His office handled the prior authorization paperwork and enrolled me in Pfizer's patient savings program. They were fantastic throughout the entire process. The biggest headache for me was actually the specialty pharmacy. I spent several hours on the phone trying to get everything sorted out. They kept telling me my insurance had denied the claim, which I already knew, but there was confusion about how to process everything through the savings program. Eventually, I called Pfizer directly. Their representative stayed on the phone with both me and the pharmacy and walked them through exactly how to process everything correctly. Once that happened, things finally started moving. Hopefully, your experience is smoother than mine because that part was honestly pretty frustrating. One thing I really appreciated was my dermatologist. While all this paperwork was being sorted out, he kept giving me another 30-day sample every month, so I never had to stop taking the medication. That made a huge difference. Once I finally had the medication, I decided to document everything. Every single day, I took a picture of my scalp from the same angle. I wanted to see if I could actually notice any changes over time. My dermatologist told me from the beginning not to expect overnight results. The plan was to reassess everything after 3 months. He said 6 months would give us an even better picture, but by 3 months, we'd have a pretty good idea whether the medication was working. In my case, I actually started noticing tiny hairs before I even finished my first 28-day sample. Maybe I was paying extra attention because I was taking pictures every day, but I genuinely felt like I could see small hairs starting to come back within that first month. By the 3 month mark, I had significant regrowth. My eyebrows, which had completely fallen out, were starting to grow back, and I was seeing new hair across much of my scalp. The biggest challenge was still the ophiasis pattern around the sides and back of my head. That area has always been the most stubborn for me, and it was definitely slower to respond than the rest of my scalp. My dermatologist also pointed out that I have some male patterned hair loss in addition to alopecia areata. Because of that, he recommended adding both oral and topical minoxidil. He also discussed dutasteride as an option, but after weighing the pros and cons, and based on my own previous experience, I decided not to take it. That's a personal decision, and it's definitely something to discuss with your own doctor. By 6 months, the difference was obvious. My eyebrows had fully grown back, and my scalp continued filling in. Looking back, that was probably the point where I realized this medication was really working for me. Around 1 year, I was probably back to about 80% scalp coverage. Today, after about a year and a half on Litfulo without missing a single dose, I'm closer to about 85%. The ophiasis area around my sideburns and the sides of my scalp is still the most stubborn part, but it has continued to improve over time. One unexpected thing I noticed was my beard. I always thought I had a pretty full beard, but after starting Litfulo, it became noticeably thicker. I don't know if everyone experiences that, but it definitely stood out to me. As far as side effects go, my experience has been pretty mild. I may have had a little heartburn early on, but adjusting my diet seemed to help. Other than that, I really haven't noticed any major issues. Even as a teacher who's around students all day, I haven't found myself getting sick more often than I did before. Overall, Litfulo has been the most effective treatment I've ever tried for my alopecia areata. That doesn't mean it'll work the same way for everyone, and unfortunately, there's always the possibility of a relapse in the future. But for me, it's been life-changing, and I'm incredibly grateful for the results I've had so far. If you're just starting Litfulo, I hope hearing my experience gives you a better idea of what the process can look like. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I read every one of them, and they often give me ideas for future videos.